Welcome to episode 2 of Leading Adam. Today we're going to dive into why the podcast is even named Leading Adam and hear a little bit more about Adam's story. And we're going to get real about that one thing we want to change to get from where we are to where we want to be. And we hope you do the same. Stay tuned.
The Leading Adam podcast is hosted by me, Adam Binkerd. I've spent the last 10 years researching how a healthy human experience is the key to innovation in student retention and education. And now I'm taking to the mic to share what I've learned. Hear how I've defied the odds and transformed from a landscaper to a national expert in student success in less than 10 years. Not an educator? That's okay. Stay tuned for entertaining stories and practical takeaways about leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. The Leading Adam podcast is co-hosted by Erica Crabtree, produced by Chris Spangle, and sponsored by 240 Solutions. Connect with us at 240solutions.com, and I hope you'll stay tuned because together we can change the world.
Hey, Adam, we made it to episode 2.
We made it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Seasoned pros already.
Oh, yeah, we're there. We're there. Basically experts at this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, today we're going to dive in to talk a little bit about why is the podcast named Leading Adam?
Yeah, and it's probably not what you think.
Probably not. And we can't talk about it unless we talk about self-leadership, which is a little bit, makes me a little bit nervous.
Why?
Because that's hard. It's hard to look at yourself. It's changing is hard, and looking at yourself like that is hard. But I'm excited. It's important.
Yeah, it is important, and I think it is difficult, and maybe that's why most often we put it aside. But we'll get to that. But yeah, I think Leading Adam, clearly my name is Adam, but that doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. Although I would say in my life, and maybe you can attest even from your perspective over the last 8 years that we've known each other, I am wholly committed to self-growth. And so I think it's relative in leading self, leading Adam. But really what started it was actually a segment of my devotions. So in listening to my devotion, the narrator kind of flippantly mentioned that the Hebrew word for human or humanity is Adam, pronounced in English as Adam. And I thought, that can't be a coincidence. 10 years of investing myself to understand humanity and how the human experience is connected to success and outcomes, whether those be customer outcomes or student outcomes, whatever the case may be. It just really hit hard. And, we've been talking about doing this for well over a year now.
A while.
And so it just kind of fit, leading Adam, the idea of leading humanity, but also leading self.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit in episode 1 just about your history with education and the struggles you had. And I'm just curious, how did you land on studying humanity? Like, that's really specific. It's not, I don't hear that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, what led you down that path?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that it was a singular moment. I think a part of my journey experienced trauma in the form of sexual assault at the age of 15, which resulted in some decisions that I made to be addicted. That's not a popular viewpoint. People want to see addiction as a disease, and it is, but it's also a choice, and it's a choice I made. In that process, I think what happened is I began to lose self-worth and self-value so much that I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. And then coming to realize along a lot of ups and downs that somewhere along the line, whether I had an education, whether I had a good career or not, I was still human. And that mattered. That played into some value in society, is just the fact that I am human. And what does that mean? And I think that's really what started. It's just maybe a personal intrigue, is if that's all that I am, because addiction has a way of stripping it away from you. And I had many things stripped away from me in the process of 13 years battling addiction. And I think I was left in a place of emptiness. And I think all I had was my humanity.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know what that meant.
And it's interesting because those feelings you had were a result of your specific path there through addiction and through the things that you went through. But I know so many of us, and myself included, we can get to those feelings in a different way. But we need to come out of those feelings, or how we come out of those feelings. Just really relates back to who we are as humans and understanding our worth and what we have to offer and finding our way back to that.
Yeah.
Because we know, and my faith guides me. I can only speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for you. My faith guides me to say that everybody has value.
Yeah.
And that's what I see when I look at a person, and I no matter what they've been through, you are loved and you have value. And if at the end of the day, I can make a person feel like that, but I have to feel like that first, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's so true for me too. You weren't speaking for me, but it's relative. It is a faith orientation first,
right,
for me. And as I started down this path, this was August 5th, 2007 was what I like to refer to as my freedom date. Like that's the day I walked out of the hell of addiction and started walking towards a vision that I had for my life. In that moment, it very much was a faith-oriented thing. It was very much a faith-centered thing, that I have value because I'm human.
Yeah.
From a biblical standpoint, Genesis 1:26 talks about creation and this conversation, if you will, between God, the Holy Spirit, and Christ, saying, let us make man in our image. And there's a picture there of there's value in me as a human simply because I'm created in the likeness of the Creator. So that's where it started, but it's matured since then, and I still hold that very close.
Yeah.
But I realized in the process that not everybody subscribes to biblical thinking.
Right.
In the moment I say that, you lose people. But what you said is what people connect to. Sometimes I feel like I have no worth. Sometimes, in whatever circumstance has led me there, I find myself in this place where I've accepted that I have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
And it's from there, like, how do I come out of that?
Right.
And I think, again, it begins by recognizing that there's value in simply being human. But we've twisted it to all the things we can do.
Yeah.
Right? The degree I have, the job that I have, the money that I make, the car that I drive, what my kids did or didn't do. And all of those are human doings.
Yeah.
But we're human beings. And somewhere we got to come back and go, just being human gives me value.
And all of those can be taken away. Like I think of the times where I've really felt like I didn't have a lot of self-worth at the time, or I was struggling with those types of feelings, is when I've gone through the layoff, or, you talk with people, relationships change and evolve. And, you go through these periods of life where you're thinking, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What the heck? Jobs come and go, income comes and goes.
Yeah.
Things like that happen. But at the end of the day, you have your humanity and yourself there,
right,
and your worth and your value and what you bring to the table of life.
It reminds me, Erica, when I started 240 Solutions, I started it after being let go from a job during COVID. My wife and I both lost our jobs in the same day. And so we're like, we're going to start a business. And I had gotten the question so many times, like, aren't you afraid? I'm afraid of what? I'm losing everything. And my response was, worst case scenario, I lose everything.
Right.
Because I had already come to the growth that the things that really matter can't be lost. I'm not going to lose my community.
Right.
I'm not going to lose my relationship with my kids, barring some horrific decisions that I made. What am I going to lose? My house, my cars? Who cares? Like, none of those things have any real value in what really matters. And so, like, adopting, that's what it means to come back and go, I'm a human first and foremost. And that should inform, as we lead, that philosophy can inform some powerful leadership structures and strategies. And so, first and foremost, which apparently you're afraid to talk about, is self-leadership. So, yeah, I don't know. I think with everything that we're going to talk about through this journey, it has to start with self.
Right. And so let's start a step backwards. How do you define self-leadership?
I think we start by defining the idea that I'm not accepting status quo for me. So some might define self-leadership in a very specific way as to execute A, B, and C. For example, to continually add to your education. Like, that's a very technical thing. But the reality of leading self is that it's different for you than it is for me, than it is for the person walking down the sidewalk right now. And I think that is where it has to become is a refusal to accept what I know to be true about me when it comes to complacency, but I can hide from you.
Oh, right.
Does that make sense? So it's like, you may say you need to lead yourself here, when I know the reality is that I need to lead myself in this way, but you can't see that. And so I think defining self-leadership is first adopting a mentality to refuse status quo, like just stagnation.
Yeah, and really coming face to face and being very honest with yourself about what are those things that really need to change in order to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah. I think of, we work in an organization doing leader development with the group. And one of the attendees, as we're going through all the leader development, which moves through a process of leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. It's kind of the process that we do. And during about midway through leading leaders, one of the participants raised his hand and he said, "So what you're saying is that you have to give a damn." And I thought, yeah.
Sure.
You do.
Sounds about right.
And so, like, how does that apply to self-leadership? Well, first of all, you have to care about you. But you also have to care about why. And, we said in episode 1, we just touched on it in a minute, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Sometimes we romanticize what it means to lead. Leadership sucks. Leadership's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's people work. It's emotionally exhausting. And that's why most people suck at it, because they turn it into a task list.
Sure.
That's not leading. But when you start with what Josh was asserting, to say, well, so you have to give a damn. Yeah. If you start there and go, I care about Susie and Johnny. And because I care about Susie and Johnny, I cannot allow this thing in my life to persist.
Right.
Whatever that thing is. And that comes back to the willingness to be honest, right? Transparent enough with yourself to say, I suck at this.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
Yeah, and we can take that and apply that to organization. Hearing you talk about that makes me think of applying those kinds of principles that to self-leadership to just even raising my own family and how I behave in the household and friends has really broad applications and really, I was joking initially. I'm not totally scared of the topic, but I am a little bit relieved because with self-leadership, it is something that each of us, I have control over that. It's what I need to change within myself. It's, within each of us as individuals.
Yeah.
So when I'm, working with the team, I have control over how I react, how I show up every day with my team members and with my family or whoever that might be. So, I'm thinking of a book
written by Kaussis and Posner called 10 truths about leadership. And one of those truths is that leaders model the way. I was sitting here thinking about what you said. This applies to the way you lead at home.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any better model for leadership than parenting. In parenting, we have a microcosm of organizational leadership, and you see very quickly what apathy at home leads to in the employees, right? And the result of what those employees are doing or not doing. And so I think in this case, what I hear you saying is I have control over it, first of all, and having that control is in some ways saying this is what my home will be.
Right.
Because I'm going to model this, and so it will be replicated. So I don't know if it's fair to ask you off the cuff here, but as a mom, I'm not a mom.
Right.
Never been a mom. I thought about trying once. Turns out it's not possible. But as a mom, when you think about that, like coming back into the home, a microcosm of organizational leadership, in what ways have you seen the result, either positive or negative, to a choice to lead yourself or a choice to maybe be a bit apathetic?
Yeah. Well, so in my household, I know it's different in others, but I do a majority of the cooking. I have 2 daughters, 15 and 12 right now. And I have definitely noticed the influence I have if I don't take care of myself in a healthy way. That trickles out to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's kind of frightening how much everybody else in my household is influenced by that. And because I do a majority of the cooking, if we're eating pizza and things that come out of a bag every day, then that's going to impact all of our health, including my own. So there was a few years ago, I really, really committed to exercising and getting really healthy. And I noticed when I did that, my kids did it with me. My husband started doing, he suffers, we're in our 40s. There's back issues. There's things get sore. He started doing yoga because I was doing it and I introduced him to it. He still does it. So disciplined almost every day.
Wow.
So I noticed that if I get apathetic about taking care of myself in those ways, one, I'm not as happy. I don't feel as good. Right. And so my kids can see that. My husband notices that if I feel a little grumpy. So I know that's a huge thing in our household. If I take care of myself, then everyone else is taking care of themselves.
Yeah, because you're not an empty cup.
Right.
But there's 2 things I heard you say, and we got to clarify for the listeners. Number 1, Jim is a hop, skip, and a jump from ballet. Jim, you're doing yoga daily.
That's right.
Come on, man. Get on board. Saturday mornings, ballet with Erica.
That's right.
And the second thing I heard you assert, which you might be shocked, America, not all food comes from a bag.
Does not.
Apparently, there is something other than frozen pizzas and chicken nuggets.
But frozen pizzas are really excellent too, so don't take those off the menu, but there are vegetables.
That's going to have to be another episode because I genuinely want to learn more about this food you speak of that's outside of a bag.
Yeah.
But no, I think, going back, it makes me think a close friend of mine's mom likes to prepare, had raised her children, I should say. Her name's Kathleen, to prepare themselves every day. Make sure you've eaten right. Your hair's done correctly. You wear the right thing. And her whole point was that when you do that for you, and then you step into the world, you're ready to be focused on something else other than yourself. It's similar to what you're saying is, let's take care of this first.
Yeah.
So that out of this, I can express value, gratitude, thankfulness to other people. And I can't do that as long as I'm sitting there thinking about me and what I don't have or what I don't get.
A whole lot harder.
A whole lot harder. And I think the other thing I want to point to that I hear you saying is how simple it is. Right? We started, and I know you were joking, but I think you represent the voice of so many, and we go, leading yourself. And we go, oh no. Mm-hmm. Right? Because we go to the worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
And what you just described, I'd say mothers across the country are going, oh, that'd be nice. Take some time for me. Yeah.
Right.
Like, do it. I think we overcomplicate it is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think there's a part there where we go, if I make it 10 times harder than what it should be, I'm never going to start.
Right.
Right.
And making it something that's so huge and seems really complex and overwhelming. I'm a huge fan of the James Clear Atomic Habits, where the idea of getting 1% better, but taking something and starting small. You're not going to start making healthy meals for your family, 3 meals a day overnight, right?
Yeah.
But maybe one night start small, start with a little thing, start to gradually work into that. Incrementally, you look back a year later and it looks totally different.
Maybe that's why we struggle so much. We're so high demand. Like, I need it now.
Right.
Like, I want to lose weight, but I also want to go to McDonald's.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I mean, they don't go together. So, yeah, I don't know. I think, one of the things we committed to, Erica, and do this is that we want to have great conversations, but we also want to leave the listener with something that is helpful.
Yeah.
Like, how do I apply this today? And so today, knowing that we were going to be diving into why is the podcast called Leading Adam, and there's no way to avoid self-leadership in that process, and we're going to talk more about humanity in future episodes, but I brought these cards with me. It's essentially just like a deck of cards. We call these the 240 cards. We use these when we facilitate, but in this case, they're just blank. But I like this as a representation because I think if I were to set this here in front of you, and for the listener is to visualize this process, or go get a deck of Hoyle cards out and do this. But I would set this in front of you and say, this deck of card represents everything that stands between who you are today and who you potentially can become. That's everything right there. All you got to do is get through the deck, right? And then my response or my request of you would be, just if I say to you, Erica, what's standing between you and who you want to be, and then I ask you to draw a card and tell me what it is, that's the thing that you need to work on, right? So that's where I would leave it. Like, if you were to draw a card and turn it over instinctively, what does it say?
Yeah. So I'm going to draw a card. And I think if I could think about that thing that I would want to improve is to make really good use of my time and be more present. That's something I get in my head a lot. And that is one thing I'm trying to get better at as a mom, as a employee of all the things, is to be more present, and in the time that I do have, make the most of it, and not to a point where I'm overdoing it. I'm exhausting myself and burn myself out on things. But yeah, I think being more present and more aware, so that I can be more intentional about those steps I'm taking, or making memories with my kids and my husband, or whatever that might look like. Yeah. Learning new things.
Well, what's good about that is you may also want to learn how to play the guitar. But if you don't have time, right, you can't play the guitar. So you've given a perfect example here, because the sole focus right now, when we look through the lens of leading self well, the sole focus you should have is, how do I care for my time differently? Right? And not assign it a good or bad. Because we want to say, how do I care for my time better? Well, now you've assigned it good or bad. It's neither. It's it just is.
Right.
So how do I care for it differently? And that's where you're at, and to meet you where you're at. If I'm drawing a card and I'm looking at this card transparently, I got to speak to myself differently. Mm-hmm. All the things that I've walked through and out of in my life, I still find myself in this place daily where I'm frustrated because I don't have a team, and that's the big one right now. Being an entrepreneur, you're out, you got 100 bosses, like traded in one for 100.
Right.
That was smart.
Right.
I also traded in one job for like 12 that I hate. I don't like IT, but I am the IT guy. And it starts to kind of compound.
Sure.
And I think for me, it's simply getting a start to a day and saying, I've got great people around me. Mm-hmm. I've got good colleagues. I've got a great family. I think for me, it's just restating what is instead of focusing so much on what isn't right now.
Right.
So.
Well, good. So I think we just posed a challenge to our listeners as well. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So take a card.
Take a card.
A virtual card. And determine what you would have on your card and what that one thing is that you would change or need to identify to lead yourself to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, you're never going to lead others.
That's right.
At least not effectively. So, hey, that was good today.
That's right.
Nailed that
Good
time,
job.
huh?
Good job.
All right.
Thanks for joining us here at the Leading Adam podcast. We hope you found inspiration and hope to see you again next time. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or if you have an idea for a future episode, let us know that too. You can connect with us at 240solutions.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again next time.